The CEO of Microsoft spoke to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu earlier this month about his company's planned new investments in Israel. The United States software giant is apparently in talks to expand its activity and footprint in the country and may invest in additional hundreds of millions of dollars. Now, notably, Google also recently announced that it was setting up a similar research and development center in Israel. Now, to get much more of a look at that and general economic forecast in this moment here, we're joined by Dr. Alex Coleman, economic expert at Tel Aviv University. Thanks for being with us again, Dr. Coleman. Microsoft already committed to setting up this R&D center here. They're talking in 2021, I believe, this year. Talking about an expansion of between $1 to $1.5 billion of investment here?
Well, Microsoft has a lot of money. Their stock rose by 57% last year alone. They're doing fantastically well with the cloud, the idea of hosting on the cloud. And they're looking for several things that would send more companies into the cloud. So they already have a center in Israel that is working on bots, these chat bots that are used also in healthcare. So, for instance, there was this concern that many people wanting to know if they have COVID-19 or not would go to the hospitals, and the solution was call a bot, talk to it. And so that was a very successful project conducted by Microsoft. So Israel is doing very well in this arena and also in the hardware chip arena.
So chip manufacture, that's been a big sector for Israel for decades now, but now you're talking about artificial intelligence as well being a major focus here?
Yeah, yes, as well as cyber.
And is Israel on the cutting edge of that? I mean, is it considered a world leader in terms of what's being researched and developed here?
Actually, the first deal that I can recall with Microsoft and an Israeli company was the idea of reading your motions for computer games. So Microsoft, the Xbox was, the idea was that you do not have any controller in your hand, and it's able to see, for instance, when you play tennis or dance or whatever. So that was the first big deal that I remember. And I think later on there were several others. Cyber, of course, Israel having the misfortune of being attacked by cyber, and so we are leading in that area, and artificial intelligence as well.
Certainly the situation demands the greatest innovation. We've seen that in a lot of sectors in Israel today. But this has been a year where we've been talking about the economy constantly. Obviously been in focus, been hurt by all the lockdowns and closures, the worldwide closures. Looking at Israel's economy at large with this story in the context here, what's your forecast for emerging from the pandemic?
So first of all, I think Israel is in a good position to leap forward in the sense that we're in the high tech, so we're connected to a sector that is doing fantastically well. If you look at all the S&P 500, you see the technology sector taking off, whether it's Amazon, Microsoft, Facebook, and whatever. And all of these companies have development centers in Israel. On the other hand, if you're on the lower parts of the pyramid, you're really doing poorly. And I think one of the problems is that the government did not spend enough money to retrain people who are in sectors that no longer require headcounts, the serious headcounts that we saw in the past. I mean, when you used to fly abroad, you would buy insurance over the phone. Now you do it in an app. They used to check your passport. Now you do it biometrically. They're talking about autonomous taxis to the airport. So the bottom of the pyramid basically needs to shift and find itself, and the government is not spending enough money on that. So we're going to see pain in this area.
And with the focus on Israel, the global attention has been largely positive as it's countries emerging from the pandemic with the robust vaccine campaign here. How does that factor in terms of how big companies are now looking at investing here? Is this even a more positive light on Israel as a real powerhouse of a factory?
Well, it's surprising because, I mean, normally when you employ people, you look for the cheapest people, and that's why all our clothes are made in Southeast Asia. And of course, you can find much cheaper programmers and high-tech people in India, Russia, Ukraine, etc. But apparently, and that's something that you do not see around you, Israel is more creative, more original, more like Waze and like startup nation. So you cannot argue with that. The only problem is we don't have enough people who are in the high-tech, and that's why we need to bring in sectors that are not playing in the game. And by that I mean Arabs, women, and in particular the Haredim. Haredi women are already in this sector, but the men not yet. And I think we need to encourage that dramatically.
There's more room. There's more room in the office. You're saying the virtual office at this point.
In the virtual office, yes.